welcome everyone. I'm Sherry Richert Belul, author of Say It Now, 33 Creative Ways to Say I Love You to the most important people in your life. And boy, oh boy, are we going to have a great time today. We have BJ Gallagher, hello BJ, and Sam Beasley, and they are the co-authors of Your Life is Your Prayer. And some of you may remember, I think it was about a month ago that BJ was here. And hi, Rachel, we're just getting started. BJ was here and we were talking about the many forms of prayer. And at some point, money came into the conversation, and wow, it was like everything just got so exciting and lit up. And we all joked that we were going to have a whole hour on money. And lo and behold, Sam was able to join us, and we got BJ back, and we're talking about money and spirituality today. So put on your seatbelts. It's going to be a great ride. So before we launch into our topic, I'm just going to go ahead and have BJ and Sam introduce themselves just so that you can get to know them a little bit before we launch into talking about money. So BJ, why don't you start us off and just tell us how you're doing and what you're up to.
Sure. Let's see. Well, my name is BJ Gallagher. You all know that. I live in Los Angeles. I'm an author and a speaker, and trying to figure out if I'm semi-retired or not at this point. Still on the cusp, and that's kind of a nice place to be. You know, not knowing is a nice place to be. Enjoying the end of the pandemic. I got to hug my 97-year-old dad on Father's Day down in Carlsbad, and I get to hug my 52-year-old son whenever he comes over. So, you know, hugs after the pandemic are such a treasure. And money is very much on my mind. Money and retirement, money and travel. I mean, I can't think of a time in my life when money was, well, maybe when I was a kid, I didn't think about money too much. But I just want to share this quick quote from our book. It's a quote by Joe Moore. He says, "Money is a strange thing. It ranks with love as our greatest source of joy, and with death as our greatest source of anxiety." And I thought, that kind of sums it up. Joy and anxiety, the two sides of money. And Sam.
Okay, Sam Beasley. I'm a business owner and serial entrepreneur, and I'll say something that we don't normally say in our society. I'm quite successful at it, and I've become quite prosperous, and as a result of it, and that was a goal that my wife Suzanne L, who's on the screen here, and we set that goal 26 years ago, and to go from abject, miserable poverty and to figure out how to have a well-funded retirement, and we managed to do that, and something I'm really grateful for. And along the way, Suzanne and I wrote 2 books about money and financial compulsivity, and then BJ and I wrote this book, Your Life is Your Prayer, and those are linked in surprising ways. Your Life is Your Prayer came out of a series of events where I had to begin to create better thoughts, and I used to have to carry them in my pocket and pull them out and read them, and it continued on, and eventually BJ and I morphed some of them into our book and wrote some more together, and some more useful ways of thinking. And you know, I thought we'd end up talking about currencies today, and that's kind of an example. Thought as currency, you know, because the quality and intentionality of those thoughts generated the life that I have now. I could tell you that I bought this life with those thoughts, and I'm grateful for that. And grateful
Wow.
for all of you and BJ and Suzanne, and hello, Nita. Nice to see you there. Mhm.
Wow, Sam, that's so powerful. I really loved that last, I mean, I loved everything you said, but that you bought that life with your thoughts.
Mhm.
Let's just start there. How's that, you guys? Let's just, because that's really powerful.
Mhm.
Do either of you want to just leap off from there and talk a little bit more about that? Tell us more.
I'll jump in here, and because it sort of adds to the background of the book that I've known Sam for about 14 or 15 years, and basically I wanted what he had, so I said, "Would you teach me how to do what you do?" I mean, how else do you find spiritual teachers? So I consider Sam to be my spiritual teacher as well as my financial teacher. And and one day it was, I can't remember how many years ago, but I called him I was complaining about something, I don't know what it was. And Sam said, well, um, if you want to change your life, you need to change your prayer because your life is your prayer. And I said, what? And he, like, what was it? So he explained it to me, and I went, oh, of course. And that's where the idea, I mean, he'd known that for many years, but it was a new concept to me. And that's really how I started looking at it. And one of the places to look is your checkbook. If you want to know what you value, if you want to know what you treasure, if you want to know what's important to you, you can look at somebody's checkbook register and it will tell you a lot about who they are, what they're interested in, what they value, what's important to them. And so that really planted the seed for the book. And I'll tell you that phrase, your life is your prayer, just turned my life around. And looking at money as my prayer, earning as my prayer, spending is my prayer, hiring people is my prayer. So he's been my teacher all these years. And hang out with the winners and watch what they do and learn from them and ask them to teach you. And that's how, don't hang out with people who are crying all the time they don't have any money. Hang out with somebody who has money and ask them how they got it. That's Sam.
Yeah, BJ's not acknowledging it, but it worked for her. So,
Yes.
it's good. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I must. It's still a new reality, but in the last year, I have become a millionaire, and I went, how come I don't feel like a millionaire? It's because there's a lag time between where we are and how we kind of feel internally, that I spent so many years struggling and whining and complaining and why don't I have it? I don't have enough money, saying all the wrong prayers, like I don't have enough money, and now I have enough money. Wow.
there's the title of this thing, spirituality and money. It could be, it's easy to think that, oh, this must be an enlightened, joyful connection. But the truth is, most people, the connection between money and spirituality is that their spirits are just beat to crap by money. And they're defeated and don't see any real possibility to experience a life that feels prosperous to them. And then there is the flip side where we can both use our spirit to I know we're actually taught in our society money comes first and then a great life, and you buy a great life. Now that does happen sometimes, and but I could tell you, buying a great life is a skill, and if money falls into your lap from out of the blue, pretty good chance you don't have that skill, and it may very well not only not make you happy, it may make you miserable too. to have like the financial ability to have a good life, but not the skill to have a good life. And so I know we often think money comes first, then those dreams that we think money will fulfill, then they happen. And it can, but more often it happens that somehow we stumble into the spirit of appreciation, the spirit of gratitude, we started this call today where Sherry asked people, had they seen anything beautiful today? That she really summed up this 1 hour workshop in that one question. Have you seen anything beautiful today? Because when your eyes can see something beautiful, you're in wealth. And just right then, you're in wealth right then. And in prosperity right then, and in abundance right then. And it happens with the eyes. It happens with quite a few things. I think of and Suzanne, we often talk about what is money for? It buys time, space, and silence. And that's what you can do with money. And so the wealthier you are, the more time you have, the more space you have around, and you have the option of choosing environments that are quiet. And often that takes money to get that. And then there's and so I think of those as currencies: time, space, and silence. And then a couple more currencies: physical energy and psychic energy. Are these are the things that we spend. And it's a thing that I think Suzanne really taught me this, that these are expenditures, and they buy us something. And what they buy us really depends on, I guess, our becoming skilled at the language of wealth and prosperity, and really intentionally skilled at it. Now, I'm not actually saying something that's kind of way out there. We're already skilled at the language of despair and deprivation. We're really good at it. We probably all have our list of complaints about what isn't there that we wish was there, what's there but it's not good enough, what's there but it's a burden. And we're just really good at that. Our whole culture is taught that. And so we do have the option of really intentionally becoming skilled in the language of prosperity. And we did it at the beginning of this call. Have you seen anything beautiful today? I could ask you in some different ways: have you loved anyone today? Have you laughed today? Early on in this call, we laughed a lot, and it was great. It was a state of abundance. And have you felt joy today? Beauty's one. Have you been excited? Have you felt creativity today? Have you been curious today? Have you been in service today? These are ways that we can experience wealth, actually be in it. And I promise you, I could, if you're a person who hasn't accumulated a bunch of money, I could have you come and sit next to me at this desk, and I could put a pile of money on the table and say, that's yours. No, don't touch it, ever. And you will not be wealthy. I don't care how big the pile is. Okay? It's when we intentionally use it to buy a joyful life that we actually begin to experience wealth. So and that starts really small. Really small. Like Suzanne and I always tell people, if there's something you want, get an envelope, write what you want on it, and put $1 in it. And it starts really small, And but it's that change in the idea that maybe I actually can have a life that pleases me. That's really the spiritual connection to prosperity, in the same way that I'll never have what I want is the spiritual connection to deprivation.
Mhm.
And um, it'll either beat you up or thrill you. And, yeah.
One of the practices that we that Sam taught me and we included in our book is the practice of active gratitude, of scheduling time. You know, years ago, Sam said, you know, put it on your calendar twice a day, or set your watch or whatever you do, and make an appointment with gratitude. And his example was, do you like where you live? And I said, yeah, I love where I live. I live in this little stucco box on top of a mountain with a killer view. And he said, okay, so you walk around this place where you live, and you know, you pick up the thing you look at, or you pick up the things you love, or you look out at the view that I'm looking at now, go, oh, I love this. I'd like more like this, please. Or, oh, my grandmother's quilt. Oh, I'd like more like this, please. Or, you know, whatever it is, my cat. Oh, I'd like more like. And so, because what we appreciate appreciates, it grows. And then the other way to do this, so do that twice a day. Just set your watch for 5 minutes and look for things that you appreciate and you love. And like when I'm out walking the dog, I look for 3 things that I'm grateful for. Or if I'm, you know, driving across town, I look for what are 3 things at least 3 things, could be more, but to really, because energy flows where attention goes, but the mind is a mismatch detector. The mind, everybody's mind, it's the nature of the human mind. The human mind will always notice what's wrong before it notices what's right. It's a survival mechanism left from our days, probably, but it doesn't serve us very well anymore, because it's like you have a tooth missing in your mouth and your tongue just keeps going back to that spot, that it just worries that spot because something's missing, and then your whole body is consumed with something's missing. Well, our minds are always doing that, scanning for what's missing. But we can retrain our minds to look to celebrate what's right in the world, to look for the abundance, to look for the face of our grandchild, or in my case, you know, the face of my COVID kitten, to look for, oh, the trees in my neighborhood, or, oh, the blue sky in Seattle. So you can do that over time. You can retrain your mind so that it is less and less and less a mismatch detector and more a joy detector, so that we're always, you know, the radar goes off. Oh, look, joy, there's joy. Oh my goodness. We really can retrain our minds, and it starts with the inside. It's an inside. Money's an inside job. Prosperity and wealth are an inside job. Totally. That's where the game is played.
Yeah,
You know
I know. Wait, go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I just quickly wanted, because I wanted to link what BJ just said to your envelope practice, because I feel like for anyone who may not have read the book, please read the book. But also, I just want to say a little bit more about that, Sam, because when I first read that book last year, and have been practicing the envelope practice. And so basically, in my experience, what that does is what BJ's saying is it switches the mindset from I don't have, I wish I had, I wish I were the kind of person who had, to suddenly I'm on my way, right? It's like, actually, so if I, right now, one of my things is a trip to see a friend who's going to be moving to Portugal. And, you know, so in that envelope is this trip to Portugal. It's happening, you know? And I think that that's the brilliance of simply, like you guys are saying, you know, your checkbook is your prayer. You know, that dollar even if it's just $1, and I don't really want to put the word just in there, but that dollar is your, it's your joy. It really is.
Yeah,
And this is
the
where
dollar is very important, you know, and I kind of like to distort the saying, you know, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and I really like, you know, a vacation of 1,000 days begins with a single dollar. You know, it really does begin that way. And you know, when BJ was talking about training, I think she was using the word, and Sherry, you were also talking about to develop the practice or the training of putting money in envelopes, you know, which I, in my experience, and I know in Suzanne's experience, just totally works. And start doing that, and you get what you want. And it's this thing of where we have to find the language of our successful life and become skilled at insisting on speaking it. And I'm saying that in a really way. The skill is in our ability to insist on speaking it, and because I don't want to speak it every day, but I'm really skilled at insisting that I speak it every day, and I'm more skilled at insisting on speaking it than I am on speaking it, and so I and somebody just mentioned something. I guess it was BJ. Shelby, Suzanne and I live in a 110-year-old craftsman cottage in South Seattle, facing Lake Washington, and one of the most wealthy things I do is go out on the old front porch and sit there and look at the lake. Just sit there and look at the lake, and I seldom do anything as prosperous or as value as that. You know, to just sit and stare at that gorgeous lake, and in quiet, in silence, you know, and yeah, it is, and really, it's a thing that I insist on doing. You know, is
and
to go
that's why
sit
they
there.
call it $1 million view.
$1 million view. That's right. Yeah, at least it's at least
At
$1 million
least.
view. Yeah, you know, it is a very prosperous view, and you know, I don't have one of those big mansions with a boat dock. No, I'm looking over them, but it's still great. You know, it's still very, very prosperous. So,
Mhm.
and I have I use envelopes, and um, I don't carry all the envelopes, but I'm traveling right now, and I carry the ones I need, and then I know Suzanne has her own envelopes, and we have our joint envelopes. And so, just as an example, this is groceries and gas and eating out, not business eating out, just eating out. And then I have visions, and I like to fund my visions. And it's been going on so long now that I know the ones that I already have, that I'm already called to, but I also know there are more coming. And if I know what they are, that has an envelope. Each one of those has an envelope. But this envelope is for the ones that I know are coming, but they're not here yet. And I go ahead now and pre-fund them. And there's no point in waiting. You know,
I
they're
like
on their way, and I can tell you, you have these soon to appear callings or visions or desires or fantasies. If fantasy is not a great word, once you get in the habit of funding what you want, fantasy is over right away, because you write that thing on the envelope. There's no fantasy about it. You get it. You know, you just, you know, get that envelope, write that thing on it, put $1 in. Next month, put $1 in. If you can put five in. What matters is the insistence on speaking that language, and in that case, I mean the language of saying, I will put $1 on this, I will, and then making yourself do it.
It
And that,
really,
oh, sorry, BJ, go ahead.
really is a way of literally putting your money where your mouth is.
Mhm.
And making your intention, we hear a lot about the power of intention. This makes the power of intention really concrete. It's taking the next step after saying, I want X, and go, okay, and I'm going to put the first dollar in, because we put the first dollar in and the universe starts to send more dollars and to manifest. One of the things I've heard Sam say is he always puts the first dollar in, but he never puts the last dollar in.
Yeah, never.
Because the money shows up before you're halfway through with your envelope. You've manifested what it was you wanted from that envelope, and there it is. And I thought, what a great system. You put the first dollar, it's like you put the down payment on, which is a way of asking the universe, asking God for what you want. And then God goes, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'll help you do that. And boom, the universe starts to line up to help you fulfill what your intention was. And so you never have to put the last dollar in.
And along the way, this is the thing that I love so much. Like along the way, it's joy, 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 right? And when Sam was talking about, I love that. Thank you for showing us that envelope for those future visions, because it's also like, that's wealth, right? That's a whole kind of wealth, is for you to know so certainly, I can't wait to see what's coming. There is some great stuff coming down the pike. I don't even know what it is. To me, that's, talk about currency.
Yeah. So it's a practice again, and a skill to use money to buy a pleasing life, and to just almost demand that that's how you use your money, is to buy a pleasing life. And does it have to start really big? No. Before the pandemic, I love coffee. I love coffee shops. So I could have just a great moment of wealth by going to a really nice coffee shop and sitting and having a cup of coffee and kind of watching people go by. It doesn't have to start with a motorhome. It can start with something small that brings pleasure to your life. And if you consistently use money to buy a pleasing life, then having a nice fat savings account can be a fabulous thing, because you get to know in advance you're gonna continue that. But if you insist on using money to buy a pleasing life, it begins the process of ensuring that as the future unfolds, that's what you'll be doing. It's a really powerful and joyful practice to know that somebody else may not do this for you, but you will. You will. That life you long for, you will begin the process of funding it, and then using those funds to get what you want. And that's really, really important. Want to crush your spirit, save a bunch of money for a trip to Europe, and then use it to buy a new refrigerator when yours goes out. And how to crush your spirit 101.
Yeah.
So I mean, it'll be great, and you'll be really grateful that you got cold food again, but it was supposed to be a trip to Europe. So it's that. Yeah, it is a kind of its own skill and language. I'll say this: the language of, no, I will not use this money to put new tires on my car. This is a trip to Europe, you know, saying, I'm not buying new tires for my car. I will walk, but I will not use my trip to Europe money to fund something that feels like an emergency. Um, and and insisting on speaking that kind of language slowly begins to have your life unfold in a really pleasing way. And
but he also has an envelope for car repairs.
Yeah,
That's right.
you got to know that's coming. So
You got to know.
Yeah, you got to know that tires wear out and that brakes wear out and appliances wear out so what's pleasing about that? Not going without them. It's pleasing. Yeah. So if you fund them in advance, then now do you have to put in, I don't know. Suzanne and I bought a motorhome about 15 months ago, and we haven't gotten, it had brand new tires on it. We haven't gotten to the point of replacing them, but there's 6 of them. And I think they probably cost about $500 each. And so we're already funding that, so that when that rolls around, we're not taking $2,000 or $3,000 from a trip to Europe envelope to put new tires on it. So it's too heartbreaking to do that.
I love Sam and BJ. I'm so excited by this whole topic and the way that we've joined spirituality and money in a way that we often, don't get the chance to hear. And I would love, before we open it up to everyone, because I do want to make time for people to join in, but before we go there, I'd just love to hear you both talk about, like, so what is it about our culture, particularly here in the United States, where it's like money's over here and spirituality is over there, and never the twain shall they meet kind of thing? What's up with that?
It's a kind of cultural schizophrenia. It's it's what that quote said, that money is our chief source of joy and our chief source of anxiety. That it's money's really just a form of energy, but it's an extremely powerful form of energy, and we're ambivalent about it. And there are theological reasons. I studied theology when I was in graduate school, and so if you look at different religious traditions, some of this comes from religious traditions that we're not aware of. It's for instance, the book The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism shows the interconnection between Protestant thinking and the capitalist system that we live in, that money should always be plowed back into the business. God rewards hard work. That if you're poor, it must be the whole Puritan ethic. If you're poor, it must be your fault. You must be morally inferior, and that, or lazy, or God's punishing you, or something. So in some religious traditions, there's a connection that if you're wealthy, that means you're virtuous and God is rewarding you. The whole prosperity gospel thing that you see with these prosperity preachers, usually the big mega churches, they preach a gospel that, God will reward you here in your life if you're good and you obey these rules. And so if you're poor, you're down and out, it must be your fault. You've done it to yourself. Mm-hmm. And in some religious traditions, Christianity, certain brands of Christianity, like it says in the Bible, render unto Caesar what is due Caesar, and render unto God what is due God. And there's this split that money is worldly, but not connected to spirit. In fact, it's almost, there's a suspicion that money is evil. That the love of money is the root of all evil. So there are different religious traditions, and that's what underlies this deep ambivalence, these mixed messages that we hear and feel and see in our culture around us, that, it reminds me what I was taught about sex when I was a kid. Sex is dirty. Save it for someone you love. And, it's the same with money. money is dirty, but get as much of it as you can.
Yeah.
It's whoa, we're just kind of mixed up about the connection between spirituality and money, between God and abundance and prosperity. We're just all kind of mixed up about that. At least that's my perspective as a sociologist. What do
Yeah.
you think, Sam?
When Suzanne and I decided to find our way out of poverty, desperate, being overwhelmed with unsecured credit, and when we decided to find our way out of that, we began to read books, and I guess at some level we understood that if we wanted to be prosperous, we ought to understand what it is, and we read I don't know how many books about money, more than 100, and and um, and really became educated about what money is, how it works, how it doesn't work. So one of the things that I could say in our society is um, we are in fact taught about money, but almost always by people who know nothing about it, and um, almost always by people who are not happy with their financial experience. And there's another group of people out there that do understand it, but they don't teach it. And sometimes that's for some very specific reasons. And I kind of will give you an example. As Suzanne and I became freer and freer with money, well, I'll just speak for myself. I became a terrible employee, and then I refused to be an employee at all. And so now I'm a business owner and we have employees, and I want our employees to handle their money in a way that they don't need to work anymore. And can I always get them to do that? No, but that's what I want for them. Is to uh, have money buy them the freedom to not be employed. And now, so I'm speaking as an employer. I really do want that, but I can tell you most employers don't want that. They want their employees to need their income, and education will cause them to not need their income. So I think there's a kind of
Ah,
a political economic reason to not to have people not understand it. And, but mostly it's just that we're taught by people who don't understand it and aren't doing that well financially. And I'll give you one example. Just the message that we get that um, the path to prosperity is through hard work. I trust me, it's not. And um, if that was true, then everybody would be a former McDonald's employee, but now wealthy. And it isn't true. And the path to prosperity is probably not through work at all, but through. Um, I don't mean that you can't work and generate an income. We have to take care of ourselves. And um, but if all you're doing is working to take care of yourself with without a vision for going beyond that, and then the steps that support it, um, that's probably where you will be at when you die. You'll have enough to take care of yourself, and um, that is not true of the wealthy. So there's a story I really like to tell as an example. One of the heirs to the Johnson and Johnson fortune, before he turned 21, he was going to inherit a whole bunch of money, millions and millions of dollars when he turned 21. And he had grown up with billionaire kids, and he decided to make a documentary of what it's like to be a billionaire kid. So he went around interviewing all of his billionaire kid friends. And one of the questions he asked them, he said, kids of normal families, um, when they are get rebellious, they don't do what their parents want them to do, so they won't go to college and everything. And he was asking this young woman who was the daughter of a German um, developer, and she laughed and she said, "Yeah, that's true." She said she got mad at her dad once and enrolled in Harvard, and he was kind of upset with her, and she said after a year she finally gave up and dropped out. And she said, "I wasn't going to be anything. I was just going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something." And so she was talking from such an extraordinary different perspective that she was going to make her dad angry by becoming a worker.
Mm.
So it's so we there are different lessons being learned in the world about money, and not all of them are accurate or useful.
The chief difference is, and Sam recommended a book to me years ago that was just real eye-opening, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That it's the difference between working for money and making your money work for you. And you can learn that at a very early age with very little. You start with very little money with your envelope, and you start making your money work for you. That's people who work for money never get wealthy. It's people who put their money to work for them that accumulate wealth. And that's the difference.
One of the early books that Suzanne and I read was a book. It's called Your Money or Your Life, and it's by an author, Joe Dominguez. And he had a way of talking about it. He said that often what we call making a living the truth is it's making a dying, because it just kills your life. And certainly, I certainly had that experience, that making a living was killing my life. And it took all the energy I had. Remember those currencies of physical energy, psychic energy, curiosity, creativity. It was just killing those. Because I needed to make a living, and I wouldn't change that for the world. It was really a useful experience. I came from a long stretch of unemployment into a stretch of long employment, and it was a really useful experience. I wouldn't do it again, but it was a really useful experience to have that experience of earning only to go to work the next day to earn, only to fund the life that had me going to work the next day to earn. And there was no path out of it.
Wow.
Do we have any questions from the group? I know we have a small group, so we may not have a lot of questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about thoughts as currency, and I'm wondering where emotion, do you see emotion as currency as well?
Well, thoughts and emotions are just, couldn't be more closely tied, I think. And I guess just in my own experience, if the thought creates an emotion that doesn't feel like it's lifting my spirit, I'd rather just think something else.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just I have come to see emotion as almost not more important than thought, but like at least equally as important as thought. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Could you give me an example of how that fits into your life?
Yes. So I see my emotions as being the fuel for how I show up. And that, how I show up, the sort of like, new agey kind of speak, but my actions, my behavior, however you want to define that. And
Mhm.
and as a culture, we tend to prize intellect and thought and our brains, right? And not so much our body. And it was funny, I love what you said, BJ, about sex is dirty, but save it for the people you love. Because again, it's sort of like there's the body, right? That's where emotion lives. And and the brain, which is where thoughts live, although I tend to see it as all sort of one big
Yeah.
system. And it's just I was curious. I guess I haven't given you an example yet. An example of how that plays out is that I tap into sensation in my body a lot more intentionally than I used to, and use that as a compass, if you will, for more of this, less of that. And also in terms of money, the vibration or the literal sensations that I feel in my body, which I can connect to thought and belief and identity and self-concept, that they become very close. It's become one and the same, and that there are thought feeling combos that have me show up a certain way. I don't do the money in the envelope thing, but it's almost the same. It feels the same. It has the same sort of impact.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. We didn't get into that. What other kinds of envelopes are there? Yeah, there are. It's the same. Yeah. And so I could, what I was telling Shelby about just sitting on the porch and staring at Lake Washington, that is funding an envelope. And it's mindless and thoughtless. And it's kind of why I like to go. It is funding this envelope of extraordinary peace, and I'm going to carry that full envelope with me, and there's almost no thoughts that go with it. I'm not sitting there going, oh, look at that boat going by. It's just like water. And it's just this fat envelope of peace and joy, beauty. Yeah. Well, I do. I notice that my thoughts produce emotional responses, and it used to be the other way around. Emotions produced thoughts, just not ones that I enjoyed thinking, and so I do feel the connection. I'm not robotic in how I think. I'm really thinking. I'm feeding a state of being that I want to be in. So, yeah. Hi, Brenda. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Karen, I wanted to chime in there because I really identified with what you're saying. And for me, nothing triggers anxiety like fear of financial insecurity. I can't think of, well, maybe my son's, no, money, I don't worry about my son's health too much, but fear of financial insecurity. But what I notice is that my mind is capable of carrying on more than one conversation simultaneously. So and there are thoughts like when I'm feeling anxious, I'm thinking, what story am I telling myself? What's the prayer that I'm praying? I can't even find it. I know it's there because I'm feeling anxious. So there's something that's going on in my mind. So even though I'm going, life is abundant, I have money in the bank, my house is paid for, underneath there's still some little gremlin going, it's not enough. It's not enough. You still don't have enough. And so, but I can't find it sometimes. So the feeling is actually a good barometer of what my thoughts are doing, because my thought, this mind is so busy, it can run off in a whole bunch of different directions, and I can't keep up with all the monkeys.
Mhm.
I can keep up with it. So I have to go look for that monkey that's causing the problem, and then start to consciously, sometimes, and I'll use self-talk, like when fear comes up, what's going on? What's the fear about? Oh, I might run out of money. Well, really, what's the worst that could happen? Like, oh, I could lose my house. Okay, what's the worst that could happen? Well, then I'll have to go live with my parents. Okay, so I just follow that little trail with what's the worst that can happen. And unless the ultimate consequence is death, I can go, oh, I can live with that. It's like, oh, I might live under a bridge. Well, could I live with that? Yeah, maybe. Weather is nice in Southern California. So I'll sometimes use self-talk to calm down that frightened monkey that's causing the trouble. But I didn't know that monkey was there until my body was telling me, wow, I'm really anxious. And then I go, who's causing that trouble? Who's causing that anxiety? Because my conscious mind is busy thinking about abundance and working on abundance and generating abundance. But there's, we got all these monkeys in our minds, and some of them have a mind of their own sometimes. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So when,
use your body to keep track of those monkeys.
yeah, when you were talking about, BJ, that you don't always know what the prayer is, but you know that it's there.
Yeah.
Suzanne and I have this one ultimate prayer, and it's everything goes well for us. And now it happens to be true that
Yeah.
everything goes well for us. And but we forget sometimes conditions, they manifest in a way where all of a sudden we're concerned. And I mean, we're concerned. It could be happening right this minute. This business that I'm sitting in right now, the director's quite ill, and we could be very concerned about that. And I can tell you that in the last 5 weeks we have been, and in the last 72 hours there have been moments where it's escalated. But there's going to come this moment, and it occurred 2 minutes ago, where one of us is going to say to the other, things go well for us. And that state of being will vanish, because when we hear it, it's so obviously the truth. And it's just so obviously the truth that it's really probably the best prayer I know. Things go well for us. It I could give you a ton of evidence that that's not true, and you could go, yeah, but look at that life you're living. You could negate all of my evidence by saying, yeah, but look at that life you're living. Things just go well for us. We're healthy, mobile, older people, and who get everything we want and live our lives in beauty and love and joy, and things go well for us. And life pops up once in a while, but it's fleeting, fortunately. So.
Sherry, I just want to jump in and say one more thing to Karen and to the group. There's also, we pick up on other people's energy. And I noticed during the last 4 years of that other guy in the White House, there was a lot of free floating anxiety. During the pandemic, there's a lot of fear and anxiety. So we've been living through a few years of climate anxiety, political anxiety, viral anxiety, also, and we live in this shared soup. We live in this, and we're picking up on the energy. So the thoughts may not even be original with us. We're picking up on the shared collective consciousness of fear, anxiety, worry. oh crap, we're all going to die. The climate's going to burn up. I mean, the planet's going to burn up, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of free floating anxiety that we feel in our bodies too. And sometimes it takes some time to sort that out and to, you know, like for me, I had to stop watching the cable news. I just had to stop it. It was too anxiety making over stuff I can't do anything about. And I thought, well, that's not a good use of my energy. It's not being a good shepherd. It's not being a good steward of my own psychic and emotional energy. So to protect my own energy, I may have to shut out some of the ambient energy around me. So it's hard to tell. We just have sort of
those two terms you use, shepherd and steward, that's really, that is that intentionality, you know, where you step into your own life and shepherd it in a new direction, you know, because it's heading off a cliff maybe. And I can see that right where I am right now. My profession for the last 20 years has been to fix broken businesses, and it happens that this one I'm sitting in, because it lost its director, it has an atmosphere of brokenness about it. And so my job for the last 3 days has been to come in here and communicate to everybody that nothing is wrong, and this is all addressable and it's all fixable. And so, and I don't mean this in a grandiose way, but that's what I do. And I've done a good job of it. So I could tell you that the peace and laughter that's present today is significantly different than it was Monday morning. And because all of a sudden the community here has been witnessing and experiencing shepherding, you know, and solution, and I just keep giving them the language of solution, and they'll say, but this is wrong. And okay, great, what's it going to take to fix it? You have my permission, fix it. And it's like, wow. oh, you know, it's just shepherding in a new way. Suzanne, do you have anything you'd like to say before we get out of here?
No, I have to go pretty soon, but thank you, everybody. You two were wonderful. And yeah, well, of course, I would have things to say, but I think you did a great job. So thanks for speaking.
Do you want to repeat that we're wonderful again?
You're fabulous, wonderful people, and so wise, both of you.
Thank you.
And it cracks me up, BJ, when you're saying these things about Sam, because I'm going, well, wait a minute, I know this and that. But he is a wonderful person, and I really appreciate him and appreciate you. And thank you, Sherry, for putting this on. It was great.
Yeah.
But I actually do have to go. I have to pick up my granddaughter.
Hi, Suzanne.
Bye.
I did want to repeat how wonderful you are. Just and Sam and BJ, of course, for everything you've brought. And I do think this conversation has been a shepherding. And also in a bigger picture, I also really want to acknowledge Brenda and Mango published. Stop that. Yeah. Because it's true, because I really see that Mango Publishing, and we've got some authors here, and I love you, and right, that Mango is really about offering that positive place to land and to look and to shepherd us. Right, Brenda? I mean, it's true.
Absolutely. And you'll be pleased to know that because of this ongoing conversation, that Sam and I are talking about doing a whole nother book on spirituality and prosperity. So I don't want to jinx the deal yet, because it's not a done deal. It's just in the conversation. But it starts with everything starts with a thought, then it starts with a conversation, and then we have an envelope and we make a commitment, and you know, who knows?
Pink hair always helps.
What always helps?
Pink hair.
Well, and also,
so is that I can do that.
Yes. you
Yeah.
should.
Mhm.
I'll show you how, Sam. You can
Mhm.
do it yourself.
I also want to thank everyone who's here and everyone who will be watching this replay or anyone who's come to these conversations, because it's true, right? These conversations are envelopes for, at least for me, at least I'm talking for myself, they're envelopes of what I want to see in the world, the kinds of conversations, the kinds of connection, the kind of love. So thank you. Thank you, all of you. Sam and BJ, this was amazing. I love this conversation. And thank you to everyone who's here. We're here every Wednesday. Please come back and join us again.
And thank you, Sherry. You're a fantastic
Yeah.
host.
Yeah,
Yes,
she
yes,
is.
you are. Go.
Lucky me to be here with you. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
You.
Okay.
Thank you.